Morning, AV addicts. Well, it's been a busy week, and to be honest, I'm quite tired. But let's go and do this. As we now have visitors, you good selves, I thought I'd actually do some tidying up, and this is my Joe station, basically. So, without further ado, I think we need to make a coffee. But I use these tea bags. I don't know if anyone else likes them, but crazy side thought. But does anyone know how to open these things without ripping the blimmin' bag in half? It can't just be me that has these issues. Or maybe it is. Anyway, let me know in the comments. And if there's a better way of coffee, and don't say instant, it's the devil's sweepings from the bottom of the factory floor, so we don't drink that. Anyway, let's go and get on with some work. Okay, I'm now armed with my Hot Joe. This really scruffy desk, yeah, I must apologise for it, is basically nerve centre for sorting all the joints out for the rear fuselage. I know it's a bit repetitive, but because we're working on this section here, which as you may or may remember, I want these videos basically to be almost self-contained to a certain extent, so that people don't have to flip back. But to recap, we're working on G, H, right the way back to our rear tail section. I'll actually show you some progress of how we've done with the rear tail section. Really pleased. It's 99% there. There's a few bracing wire bits and pieces to sort out, but it's really pleasing. So what we're doing is we're trying to get all the joints together and make sure we've got the right ones. And this is actually proving quite difficult. So more to that later. In line with that drawing, what I've basically done is these are joints that I have collected covering that section basically since I started the project, and they've all lived in a box and right up until now. So what you've got is you've got joint J, and I've numbered them, so you've got J, K, L, and I've gone port and starboard, and then you've got M, N, O and P. Oh, and Q in the Verona tin at the end. That was its own special headache over the last 2 days, trying to strip down some original joints to get a few bits and pieces that I actually need for the rear fuselage. It's yeah, it's been emotional, to be honest, but we are here. So now what I'm doing is I'm absolutely trying to make sure I've got everything I need for particular joints. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through joint Q, which I don't know if you remember, but it's probably one of the most complex. Well, it is the most complex one on the rear fuselage. My goodness, this vol one is so helpful, together with all the photographs I take over the years. But anyway, so what you've got here is we're going to work on joint Q, which is here. And basically there's an aluminium casting that always doesn't survive crash sites, except for one case which we'll talk about. I've got our 4181, which was Pilot Officer Colin France's joint Q, and it's in amazing condition. So what I'll do is I'll show you that shortly, but that's one that we're going to take through and do a little bit of a case study on, so you can actually see it. This is another view of joint Q, actually fitted to the aircraft. So if we try and zoom in a bit, manual zoom there, so I haven't worked this camera properly. What you've got is you can see a little round hole in the casting. That is where you put a tube through and you actually jack the aircraft up at the back. So remember, we've got the tail right the way through to the cockpit section that you saw on part one. So this is the starboard side, and so luckily I've also got a port side which I've stripped down to show you everything. So what you've got here is that's the ring I told you about. Amazingly, I can use this. It's got one small, tiny little crack there, but I can actually use that. You can see, the thing I do love about some of this stuff is you can still see the markings that the pole made as they were actually jacking this aircraft up. So this is probably as good a joint as you can get in terms of condition, certainly from a Q that I've ever found and I've or acquired. So, and what you've got is you've got these bits of the bracing wires. So you've got two of those, two lugs, and they go to the bracing wires to make it square. And then This bit's actually missing a bit, which would go on there, which I have got on one from P3490, which is the port side, starboard side, sorry. This says starboard, but it's actually wrong. Okay, so let's move to the if you like, the blown up area. One thing I should have told you, just for if ever you do get this into detail, when you go to the Vol 1 parts part, it'll give you a reference number for each of these parts. You can actually look up an index and it will give you the part number of each of those. It can be a bit of a hit and miss, because with some of the parts, I've actually found them on particularly Russian aircraft, they've actually used different lugs, which are the things that take the flying wires anyway. That's probably a bit too much detail, to be honest, but you're welcome to ask me any questions you like about this. So when we explode it, what you've got is these are the spacers that go along here inside the longeron. And for those rebuilding Hurricanes, you don't use ferrules on these points here. So they literally are bolts that go, nuts and bolts that go straight onto there, sometimes with a washer, sometimes without. Then what you've got is you've got the two side plates, stainless steel side plates. You've got that lug part. You've got a spacer here. This is the original one, but this one's from a dump. And then you've got this here, which takes the tube QQ. This is what the a normal sort of crash site queue looks like. I'm going to have to try and use this in somehow. I'm not planning to do an awful lot of jacking up, but I'm hoping that this will be suitable to actually jack, if necessary, the back of the aircraft. But there are other parts of the aircraft. We could take a belly panel off and lift it directly on one of the more substantial joints, maybe the tail section. So I'm not too worried about that being in that condition. Talks about ferrules. These are ferrules. So what would happen is you would have, where the tube's gone here, you can see it actually fitted in place on this. You've got two ferrules. They would then go into the tube, and then in the tube you would have this, which is a spacer unit, and then you pop either a hollow rivet, steel rivet in it, or you put another nut and bolt through it. So quite complex to do that, but it stops the longeron collapsing, or the tube that you're actually attaching it to. Okay, this is the little aluminium bracket that had corroded off or disappeared off the Francis joint Q. So I'm going to have to make another one of those. They're pretty flimsy, but quite easy to do. And then this, you can see, is some of the remains of the wood there on that part of the former on the woodwork. Hopefully, in something like part 20 or something, if we ever get round to it, it will cover us actually bolting some wood or putting some wood onto that, and they're held with aluminium tubular rivets. So that's basically, oh yeah, so that shows the bolt going through the ferrule, so like that effectively. I think that's enough detail for now. Right, short intermission because it was a long day, and this is the beginning of another day. Morning, chaps. Well, it's a particularly cold morning today. We've had some good sort of progress. I'm basically throwing myself into assembling joint Q, and I think we're going to do the port side because I think I've got all the parts for that now, as I showed you yesterday. So without further ado, I'll take you through it. It's quite an interesting and convoluted build, but we'll have a go and see. I'll try not to bore you. Like usual, can't do anything without a cup of coffee. It's a familiar thing right the way through all my vlogs, unfortunately. Yeah, it's so cold, to be honest. There's an old nautical saying. Lots of sayings in English come from nautical because we're a seafaring nation, apparently, or we used to be. It's cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey. Well, a monkey was basically the name they gave to a triangular bit of metal which is made of brass, and of course brass is more thermoconductive of heat than iron, and the balls were cannonballs, and they were on the old frigates and warships, And basically, if it was very, very cold, it would contract really quickly, the brass would, and the cannonballs would fall off. So it's freezing the balls off a brass monkey. Anyway, without further ado, let's get on with this. So this is the port longeron, and this is joint S here, and then this is Q. What we're going to do is we have to float these little spacers. They have to go down here. So what we have to do is basically push them on the inside of the tube, and get them up there. Easier said than done, because I think my grab tool is not long enough, so I'm going to have to basically modify a tube or something to push it up to there. So let's have a go at that. Okay, anyone who builds Hurricanes knows nothing is easy. So what you've got here is you've got the square at S, and that dimension is less than the same dimension at Q. So in an ideal world, you would just push that spacer down there, but as you can see, it's too wide. So what we have to do is put it in at a funny angle, and then when we get to the round section, twist it like that. So because that's quite a long journey and we've got 4 to do, what I have done is I've made myself a tool. So I put a bit of masking tape on the end of the rod, and then so that it doesn't give too much. It's enough to hold it basically, but it's not enough to create too much resistance when we actually want to pull it away. So that's the whole idea of that. So this obviously is a beautiful rod I especially made out of a broom. You wouldn't believe how important brooms are, or useful brooms are. So what we have to do is put it in there, like so. Oh good God, the broom is actually too. Okay, scratch that. Let's go and try again. Okay, take 2. What I've now done is I've got a bit of channel from double glazing, secondary double glazing. So let's see if this works. So again, I will actually eventually need both hands to do this, but at the moment we're okay. It looks like this might just be a bit too long, this piece of channel, but hey ho, hopefully it'll go in. So we can go in like so. Oh God, it's going in at an angle. Another funny angle. So let's have another go. Oh goodness, it was going in at a funny angle, which is no good, so let's have another go. So we pop it in there like so. Right. Now the idea is that we don't pull it back again, because if we pull it back again, it will basically come off the thing. I'm going to use both hands now, so I have to put you down. Okay, I don't want to tempt fate, but basically I've now pushed it down, further down, and then you can see where our joint Q is, and you might just be able to see there, that's the tube. So hopefully if we just push it a little bit further down, we have to do the third, that one there. So you can just see we're at the third there. Brilliant. All we have to do is do that successfully with all 4 of them. Okay, so now what we've done is we've actually fitted all the spacers inside. That actually didn't take too long in the end, which was really good, but has taught me some good lessons for putting the spacers down longer runs, because we're going to have to do exactly the same at the other end as well. And as you can imagine, if we box it in by putting the spacer here first, we then either have to go right the way down the length of the longeron to get the spacers in, which would be not a great idea, or we do what we've done here, which is get all 4 in here now. These are being reused from our 4118, and these are from P3490, which was a Battle of France aircraft. Okay, so hopefully when I next show you this in a minute, or probably in an hour or so, it will have the other bits. I'm on it. This plate can go on either side, so this is actually a starboard one, but we're fitting it on the port, so we've had to sort of put it through 180 degrees, turn it over to go it, so you can see the witness marks from where it was fitted to the other aircraft. And there we are, another milestone complete. That's the port joint Q. I haven't put everything on it. You'll notice I haven't put the aluminium bar holder that goes in the middle. I haven't put that in there yet. It needs a little bit of welding and a bit of thought, so I'm going to see if I can acquire a better one. But that is joint Q on the port side done. The good thing about doing this is now I can basically use that. I've used this one here, which is R4181, which is Colin Francis, Battle of Britain. I've used this one as to help me put this one, which is the mirror image, together the right way. Lots of thoughts went in between starting to do this and actually completing it. So you can see what I will now do, or in the next day or so, is I will put it on the starboard side, so that we then got the mirror image. I've actually got an original QQ, so I will probably then join these two tubes together, which would be really quite nice to do, and also fit it to the tail section down there at joint S. So it'll start to look more like a rear fuselage. One unhelpful person decided that it looked like a shopping trolley at the cockpit, which is very weird. He must go to a completely different Tesco's to me. But there's always one, and let's face it, it was him. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. I'll leave you for the time being, and to be honest, I'm going to get another cup of coffee and tidy up some of the vast amount of mess that I've made. So until next time, fly safely. Bye.